Here's a quote from this Reddit post. "This isn't really a question. I'm just not allowed to scream this at anyone." Okay, you might agree with this Reddit poster if you were in their same nonprofit money problem that they're in right now.
Hi, we are Ted and Lisa Snyder, and we're nonprofit consultants because we believe that a better world needs healthier nonprofits. We found this amazing, terrible,
and horrifying
post on Reddit, and we wanted to chat about it because it is an organization that is just, well, we'll get into it. They're having some money problems.
And it's not just that they don't have money.
And it's not just that they don't have money. And this is a great topic because so many nonprofits are either running, trying to keep up, or they're hoping things are working behind the scenes. And so just, it'll be interesting.
So can I start reading it?
Yep.
Okay. So a little tiny bit of background. So the poster took over the job as leading the organization, and the predecessor left. So here we go. "I started the job 3 months ago after a couple weeks of pretty thorough training. I don't come from a finance background and was somewhat anxious about the lack of focus on the financial management during the training. I was told I'm primarily responsible for our finances, but can lean on the treasurer and the accountant."
Red flag. If you are in charge of finances and you don't have a background in finances,
And they didn't train you very much.
this is a huge red flag for this person, right away. I'm like, no, go, get out. What are you doing? Because bookkeeping is crucial in any business, but especially in nonprofit. There are so many other things that you have to track and that you have to understand. And I think this organization must be big enough that they're bringing this person in. They're actually at the top of the organization. I don't think.
It says they're over the treasurer. They work with the treasurer, and they're over the accountant.
Right. But I don't think they're leading the organization. They're just over the financial side.
Got it.
It's kind of hard to tell. We're both guessing here. But if they're primarily responsible, that means they are responsible for the financial stuff. And just an ability to pick up how to use QuickBooks and whatever, depending on the size of the organization, this could be a really big issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so, and I was told I'm primarily responsible for our finances, but can lean on the treasurer and the accountant, and was taught to do the everyday bookkeeping stuff. So they're kind of doing the everyday bookkeeping stuff, but they can lean on the accountant for help with the more, nitty gritty stuff. Well, fast forward to me prepping for the fiscal year end, and the numbers are not lining up, at all. Turns out the treasurer is nearly impossible to get a hold of, and the accountant just follows direct instructions from whoever's in my position. So you can't really lean on them. They just do what you say.
Yeah. This is a huge thing that you need to know if you're stepping into a position like this, is who's actually leading it. Because if they're in charge of the day-to-day numbers, which they might be able to update a couple spreadsheets, but having an accountant as an outside person doesn't mean that they are taking responsibility for your finances. When I go to our tax guy at the end of the year, he is not taking responsibility for every single thing in the finances. He is making sure everything lines up the way it's supposed to based on what I've given him, based on how I have allocated our expenses, based on whether or not I've been honest with income and what's going out, based on all those different things.
Yeah, he's just organizing what we've given them.
That's what this accountant is. And you don't always get to just lean on the accountant. They are there for a service. Chances are they're being paid a certain amount of money for a certain amount of time. They're not there to assist you in the way that sounds like this person might have been led to believe.
And my predecessor had no idea what was going on. He misallocated funds all over the place, and the accountant, confused and working only with his direction, gave us incorrect statements. The org has been making spending decisions under the impression that we have a substantial surplus, when in fact there has been a deficit for 2 years in a row, and this year's deficit is going to be steep. Dang.
Oof.
2 years in a row working in a deficit because the numbers are so screwed up that people think you have more money than you do.
I am feeling the pressure for this organization. Yeah. I'm like, oh man, not how are we, but
okay.
I have questions.
My question is how can they even spend money they don't have, right? But this gets explained here. This has only been possible because a few of our grants pay us ahead of the coming year, keeping our actual bank account in the green. I unknowingly inherited a sinking ship. I think that's like the headline of the entire thing. I unknowingly inherited a sinking ship.
So here's the issue. If you have just enough grants coming in to keep your bank account green, but you have misallocated funds over the last couple years, you might have green in your bank account while still being drastically in the red in certain areas. And a misallocation of funds is a super big deal.
It's a really big problem.
This can be a massive amount of liability for your organization. The board should be scared right now because they have a fiduciary duty to run things correctly and they're not being run correctly. The org leader is on the hook, and there are just so much at stake here, not just for the future of the organization, but for the future of the individuals involved and how they might be held liable for this.
I think, like you had said, like if this was me, I would very much be considering resignation.
Yeah.
Because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's like it's a dangerous position to be in as the leader of the organization,
yeah,
where all of this impropriety has been taking place.
Well, even if they're not the leader of the organization and there's taking
or
over
the leader
role,
of that area.
The area, so we can't give like legal or tax advice. Whatever. But this statement, I unknowingly inherited a sinking ship. Here's the thing, you didn't know, which is true. You are only 3 months in. You are still in a position where you could write a letter of resignation, write a letter to the board, keep copies for yourself, lay out what the issues are, and say, I have not touched this nor been a part of this, and I'm washing my hands of it. And likely be able to remove part of yourself from a certain amount of liability. I would check with an attorney to confirm, because this would be something that I'd be on the phone with saying, if crap hits the fan and all this comes out,
do I go to prison?
Like, am I handling fraud here in terms of like
right.
donation management and different stuff with that? So you didn't unknowingly inherit, you unknowingly took a job. You are not responsible. This is not an inheritance. This is a job, and you are not obligated to do anything for this organization.
Right.
Like, if I was in the position, and this is just me, from the limited amount of information that we know, I would let the board know, I would let the leader know, I would get the accountant and the treasurer on board, I would let them know all the information and just say, listen, I have updated some of the records over the last 90 days. Here's what I found. I don't think I'm in the position to be able to help this, especially if you don't have a financial background. And say my recommendation would get a professional tax audit over everything to come in and look at everything, get the books picked up, hire the accountant for some extra hours, get this going, and then hire someone who has a background in this to help clean it up going forward. Wash my hands, walk away.
So I was just looking at the beginning, at the very
Like,
beginning of this post. This is probably why they're struggling, because it says, I work at an established small nonprofit. We do great work and have a strong community. This was a dream organization for me to get a job. And it's my first job that's actually related to my long-term career path. So the problem is that
it's hard.
This person believes in this organization. Yeah. They want to see it continue to work and move forward and grow and be healthy, because clearly they care about this nonprofit, which is one of the main reasons people do nonprofit work in the first place, right? It's because they care.
In that case, you might be able to bring up the issues and just say, I am not in a position to be over the area, but I can still take on some of my roles if you're willing to bring someone else in for a season. And as they teach me the role, then I can step up and get it in writing that you are not responsible for what's going on. Because
in writing is a big deal.
In writing. Because, I mean, I get that. If there have been times that we have been working with different nonprofits where it's just gotten hard. I wouldn't say like shady stuff behind the scenes necessarily, but just like nonprofit work is difficult. Mm-hmm. And there is something that when you feel the pressure of it and you truly believe in what it's doing, that you have to weigh but this is what I believe in. And making the decision to step away from a cause that you truly care about is incredibly difficult, especially if you know this organization is doing good stuff. So I would be opting out. Understanding that, though, I do understand why you would feel the desire to.
I think understanding that, I would be trying to set up a situation where I was protected from the liability, but I also tend to have a little bit of a savior complex. Like, I can fix this. So I would want to protect myself from liability in some form or fashion, but then still be able to try to make things right. Because clearly they understand the poster understands that something is wrong and kind of has an idea of how to fix it.
I'm a little bit different. If I knew that I wanted to work in this sector with this cause, but this wasn't necessarily my forever job, I would opt out, because if I get caught up, if stuff hits the fan and I get caught up as someone whose name is associated with it, it's going to make my future within the nonprofit sector much more difficult. And so that would be something that I'd be thinking of is it the cause that is my long-term dream, or is it this organization that is my long-term dream? And there are multiple avenues that you can take with either one, but I would really try to figure out the liability side and getting the records and the stuff in writing to show that you have not been a part of it for the last few years, which should be pretty easy. But the longer you stay in it, if stuff isn't willing to be fixed, because some boards, like, they say they didn't know about it, but they might have had an idea.
Yeah.
The treasurer has been keeping tabs on some stuff. And if they haven't been keeping tabs, that's a whole different issue.
And apparently they're really hard to get a hold of, which means maybe they aren't really doing their job.
Yep.
Yeah, so reading on here, this person seems like they've got a decent idea of how to fix it. So that's kind of why I'm like, protect yourself and then go for it. If you care about the organization long term, this is going to have to happen at some point. It may as well be now.
We're so different. You're like, protect yourself and go for it. And I'm like, protect yourself and
get the F
goodbye.
out.
And after they fix their stuff, come back around.
All right. So going on in the post, it says, I'm going to be the bad guy for the next 2 years who slashes all of our most interesting side programs because our central operation is at stake because of bad management. I think, unfortunately, I think that's kind of wise. I mean, it's better than slashing the central operation in favor of the side programs, which some bad leaders might try to do.
I think this is wise if your leadership is on board.
Yeah.
Just because you're leading a certain area and you need to slash stuff, if the leader of the organization doesn't want to or isn't on the same page as you, you won't be able to do it effectively. So make sure that as you're making decisions on how it's going to have to progress forward, that you have their buy-in. Otherwise, you're going to be pushing against a brick wall for the next 2 years and not going to be able to make the adjustments that are going to get this nonprofit out of the hole.
Our grant funding is also going to be at risk now because I'm going to have to report completely new, very ugly numbers to several granting bodies and hope that they aren't immediately pissed at us.
I don't think they'll be pissed. I think they'll just pull their funding. Most grant programs, like, a lot of them aren't an emotional decision. It's incredibly logical.
And it's based on numbers and it's based on metrics.
Yeah. They might be like, oh man, the part that might get bad is they might try and come after some of that money or report you somewhere for getting a grant unethically. Because typically you have to sign that everything that you're submitting is true.
Right. So, yeah, that's the really big issue there, I think. And depending on how much grant funding is supporting the organization, it could tank the whole thing. I mean, if it depends on it, like if it's like 90% of your funding is grant funded, the whole thing might be completely at risk at this point. So, like, inheriting a sinking ship might be an understatement. You might have been, like, inherited a sunken ship that just had oxygen tanks for the people on board.
Yeah. So, I mean, big thing here is your board and is your leadership actually looking, are they scrambling as much as you are? It is evident, Mr. or Mrs. or Miss Poster, that you desperately care about the situation and you're looking ahead saying, here's what we need to do in order to fix this so that we can keep it going. If you are investing more into fixing this than your leadership or the board is, I would take some time to consider that.
Is this the hill worth dying on?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it could take you out of the game.
Yeah. We've seen issues like this in scale going against leaders who don't care, and it can completely just wear someone out to the point where they quit nonprofit work altogether and by the end just don't even care about the cause. We've also seen large issues where people come together and rally and say, you know what, we are going to figure this out and we all care about this, and everyone comes together and you can actually have something great come out of this. Just caution, if you are in the middle of the organization, make sure that your leadership is as desperate for this change as you are.
Yep,
would
absolutely.
Be my piece of advice there.
Now, you're watching this video, not necessarily the person who wrote the post, but if you're watching this video and you're thinking, I have a money mess problem, but my money mess problem is that I don't have any money. We actually have a video that can help you out with that. We got 7 tips to increase donations. That link is on the video here. You can just click on that and we'll see you in the next video.